FBI Director Kash Patel is suing The Atlantic for $250 million over a story that they wrote alleging he is an irresponsible alcoholic. Here are my 10 thoughts about the lawsuit, with the caveat that I'm not a lawyer or a legal expert. Number one, the lawsuit starts out by going over some crime stats. Under Director Patel's leadership, the FBI has been doing really good. And I think that's kind of irrelevant. If The Atlantic says Kash Patel is an irresponsible drunk, and you say, well, crime's decreased, you aren't really proving that The Atlantic is wrong or that they're defaming you. Second, a lot of these stats don't really have a baseline to compare to. For example, the first one is that they captured 8 of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. I guess they're saying, could a drunk FBI director lead the FBI to do that? And maybe. I mean, how many of the top 10 lists do you capture in a normal year, right? I assume there's always a top 10 list. So is 8 good or bad? Third, some of the stats do have percentages relative to last year, but it kind of makes Patel's leadership seem pathetic. So, for example, item G here says we had more than 456 cyber indictments, up 27%. Oh, that's good. And the next stat, 257 cyber arrests, well, they don't have a comparison to last year. So are you selectively showing the up percentages and you're not showing the flat or down percentages? In which case, the pathetic part would be you're doing more indictments, but flat or down on arrests. That actually seems bad. 4, the next section is about The Atlantic's pre-existing animus towards Director Patel. And I also think that's irrelevant. The Atlantic is allowed to hate Patel or think he's a bad FBI director and should be fired. That has nothing to do with the facts of the case. Is Kash Patel an irresponsible drunk? And so the fact that numerous Atlantic pieces over the past 2 years have characterized Patel as unqualified, dangerous, corrupt, or mentally unstable, so? 5, the lawsuit says that the Atlantic article's assertions that Director Patel drinks to the point of obvious intoxication at Ned's in Washington, D.C., and to excess at the Poodle Room in Las Vegas, those claims are false. And Director Patel does not drink to excess at these establishments or anywhere else. I noticed that in a different lawsuit, where Kash Patel is suing a different guy for claiming he drinks too much, Kash Patel's lawsuit against that other guy says that FBI Director Patel has not spent a single minute inside of a nightclub since becoming director of the FBI. And so it seems like we're kind of walking that back a little bit. So first it was Director Patel has never spent a single minute in a nightclub. And now they're saying Director Patel does not drink to excess at these establishments or anywhere else. So, number 6, the FBI is mad that the Atlantic ignored an FBI letter saying the things that the Atlantic would say are false. So what happened is the Atlantic reached out to the FBI for comment. They said, we have these 19 points, which are going to form the basis of our article. The FBI responded to the Atlantic and said those 19 points are wrong. And the FBI is complaining in the lawsuit against the Atlantic that, hey, this is the strongest possible evidence of actual malice. You ignored our letter that said your 19 points were wrong. And first, I want to notice that the FBI has a different standard for the Atlantic than for themselves when they're filing a lawsuit. So later in the lawsuit, they reference the fact that the allegations are similar to allegations aired by Frank Figliucci. And they say this is the subject of pending defamation litigation. The FBI is suing Figliucci, but the defendants published it anyway. And what the FBI is leaving out here is that the most recent motion in the Figliucci lawsuit is a motion to dismiss because the lawsuit is meritless, according to Figliucci. Why I'm bringing that up is the FBI is seemingly laying out this standard that, hey, you have to report what the other party says. So when you said these 19 claims were true, we said they were false, you should report that we said they were false. And yet, the FBI doesn't hold themselves to that standard because they say there's pending defamation litigation against Figliucci. Okay, but Figliucci says your claims against him are false. That's why he's moving to dismiss. Then second, they write that this is the strongest possible evidence of actual malice to ignore the FBI's letter saying your 19 claims are false. And actually, that's not evidence of actual malice at all. far from being the strongest possible evidence. The actual malice element of defamation is about saying things with knowledge of their falsity or reckless disregard for the truth. The judge in a case called Edwards v. National Autobahn Society tells us that liability under the clear and convincing proof standard, that's clear and convincing proof of actual malice and defamation, cannot be predicated on mere denials, however vehement. Such denials are so commonplace in the world of polemical charge and countercharge that, in themselves, they hardly alert the conscientious reporter to the likelihood of error. So when The Atlantic reaches out to the FBI and says, we have these 19 elements, and the FBI says, oh, those are totally false. And if you read the FBI's letter saying they're totally false, it's just more of this stuff that's in the lawsuit. There's no real evidence that the claims are false. Then The Atlantic is right to just say, well, such denials, no matter how vehement, are commonplace and they indicate nothing. So, contra the FBI, it's not the strongest possible evidence of actual malice. It's obviously not evidence of actual malice at all. Number 7, the FBI says the Waking the Director story was operationally implausible. The Waking the Director story is that The Atlantic reported that FBI agents had to request breaching equipment because they weren't able to get Patel out of his room. So they were going to break down the door to get to the director. The FBI says this is pure fantasy. Any credible FBI source would know that breach equipment is provided to all FBI protection details. So they're saying because The Atlantic didn't recognize that an FBI protection detail would have breaching equipment, that proves they didn't talk to a credible FBI source. And it should have generated multiple written documents that they could have requested to prove there was a request for breaching equipment. But The Atlantic story just says someone in the FBI requested breaching equipment to break down the door. It doesn't say there was a written request. It could have been like an FBI agent number 1 says to FBI agent number 2, we can't get Kash Patel, go get the breaching equipment. That wouldn't have generated any kind of written document for The Atlantic to ask for. So this idea that, oh, you didn't talk to a credible source because you didn't know that all FBI protection details have breaching equipment, that doesn't really address The Atlantic's claim. All The Atlantic said was that a person in the FBI requested breaching equipment to get Patel. Number 8, the FBI complains that The Atlantic never contacted Ned's or the Poodle Room, the nightclubs where they allege that Director Patel drinks to excess, for corroboration, nor sought credit card records, photographs, or witness statements. So here I feel like I have to remind the FBI that The Atlantic is not the FBI. They can't contact a private business and demand records of the business's customers. You know, you call up Ned's or the Poodle Room and you say, hey, can you give me Kash Patel's credit card receipts? No, that's not what The Atlantic does. That's what you do. Number 8, the Atlantic article begins by alleging that Kash Patel was locked out of his computer on April 10, and he believed that was an indication he had been fired, and Kash Patel was panicked and frantic. The FBI says that on April 10, Director Patel had a routine technical problem logging into a government system, but he wasn't panicked about it. And I'm bringing this up because that kind of proves The Atlantic does have an actual source. They knew Kash Patel was locked out of his computer on April 10. So they are talking to someone who has real knowledge about Patel. Okay, I know I promised you 10, but I've got to stop at 8 due to time constraints. Those are probably my best 8 points anyway. Ultimately, I don't think that this is a very good lawsuit. I don't think it's likely to win, although I'm not a lawyer. And it just doesn't seem like there's any merit to me. Basically, what The Atlantic says is some people told us that Kash Patel gets drunk a lot and he's unreliable and erratic and afraid of getting fired. And what the FBI is saying is stuff like, oh yeah, well, crime is down across the country. Okay, so that's not a response to The Atlantic's allegations. They have this quote from Caroline Levitt that says, Director Patel remains a critical player on the administration's law and order team. It's like if you said that I'm an erratic drunk who is, absent a lot without explanation, and I say, oh yeah, well, my boss says that I remain on the team. So, I'm suing you for defamation. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not impressed by this lawsuit. I don't expect it to work out, though I'm interested to follow it. Maybe I'm wrong. Thanks for your time.